I think the hospital I work for is experimenting on patients, by Glitter Cricket. I work in a small town hospital. The closest thing to us is a Walmart, a prison, and endless miles of farmland. A lot of the patients I get come from at least 30 minutes out, but being that we are the only hospital in a 2-hour distance both ways, we are usually the only viable option. Of course, being so small, we don't do major traumas, but we do have a helipad and life flight is available to us. Most of our patients come in for flu symptoms, drug issues, and the occasional ortho patient who has scheduled surgery. And every so often, we get a prisoner or two. Other than that, it's pretty much consistent. I work in the ICU of the hospital. It's only a 12-patient bed ICU, so it's not like something you'd imagine in a big city or Grey's Anatomy. The ICU is located on the second floor. Also on the second floor is the PCU wing, for people who are cleared from ICU but still need to be heavily monitored, a cardiac wing, and a dialysis clinic. There are a total of 3 floors, but the 3rd floor never got completely built. The hospital went through a major lawsuit and ultimately had to choose between the 3rd floor and keeping the hospital afloat. The construction took a back seat, and it never got picked back up. I had heard many stories about the 3rd floor, folklore, rumors, whatever you call it. Mostly about it just being a dead zone, dangerous wires and things that you could easily fall over, unfinished walls. Nothing ever really alarmed me about it, other than we had so much space we could use for our patients that we never even tried to inhabit. But that's neither here nor there. There's an employee elevator that you have access to. I usually use it because the regular one is full of germs. The first couple times I got in, I realized there is, in fact, a 3rd floor option. It requires you to swipe a badge after you push it. Only a few people have that clearance, I'm told. So in the 2 years I've worked here, I've never tried. I work 12-hour shifts 3 days a week, the standard schedule for most nurses. The other morning I arrived early and sat in my car drinking coffee. I'm on the East Coast, so by 6 a.m. it's still dark out at this time of year. I parked in front of the hospital and was looking on the 2nd floor trying to count how many room lights were on to guess what our census was and how busy my shift would be. And I noticed something. The 3rd floor, which was always dark, had a light on. It's pitch black outside, and on the side I park isn't lit very well. So even with my bad eyes, I knew the light was coming from the 3rd floor. I watch it for a while and see nothing. I start to excuse it as someone with clearance went up there to fix something. A leak? Or something of the sort. Work was grueling and mentally draining, but eventually my 12-hour shift came to an end. I got in, and as I started the car, I remember the light and look up. The light was off now. I go home, have a whiskey, walk my dog, and watch some stupid reality TV, and call it a night. That night, I have a weird dream about being trapped on the abandoned 3rd floor. I dreamt I was walking towards the source of the light, and I could hear moaning. In my dream, I wasn't scared. I was just trying to get to the room in fear a patient might be in trouble. As I approach the room, and right before I turn the corner, my alarm goes off. I drank a 12-hour coffee on my way to work while listening to a podcast. I'm exhausted, and even though I got a solid 8 hours of sleep, I felt like I slept none. I pull into the parking lot early, like I usually do, to finish my coffee and to listen to my podcast. I park in the same spot every time. I look up and I see a TV on. The 1st floor and 2nd floor always have TVs on because it's a hospital. Patients don't sleep here. But there's a TV on the 3rd floor, in a room. I had been told there was no working electricity on the 3rd floor, so if there aren't even lights, who would mount a TV, and how? I stare at it for what seems like forever, but then eventually get out of my car and head in. About halfway through my shift, I take my lunch. My coworker and I head to the employee lounge, and I toss my sad, frozen lasagna dinner into the microwave and sit down for the 5 minutes it takes to cook. I scroll through my Facebook while I wait, then my coworker Sheena sits down. "Are you not eating today?" Sheena asks as she sits down across from me with her sub and Diet Coke. "Yeah, I just have to wait my entire break for it to heat up, and then I plan on having it in the car ride home." She laughs. Do you want some of my sub? I probably won't eat it all. She scoots her sandwich towards me. No thanks. I appreciate that, though. It looks good. She smiled and took a bite. Hey, Sheena, can I ask you something? She looks up and nods with a mouthful. Mm-hmm. Have you seen or heard anything weird happening upstairs? Upstairs? She asked with a mouthful and a confused face. Yeah, the third floor. It's just, I've seen some lights up there before, and one time, a TV. She rubbed her face with the back of her sleeve and finished chewing. What do you mean a TV? Like a TV sitting in a window or something? No, like mounted. It was mounted, like in the patient's room. Why would there be a TV up there? Is there even electricity up there? I didn't think so. I had been told that there wasn't, but how would the lights in the TV be explained, though? She looked down at her food for a while, not taking a bite. I've heard a lot about the third floor, Cassie. A lot. And I was sure she had. Shane had been here 17 years. She was much older than me and far more experienced. Several people have quit because of the third floor. What do you mean? I asked as I leaned forward. I mean, weird shit happens here, and weirder shit has happened up there. I've worked here almost 2 years, and I've never seen anything. I mean, yeah, I've heard weird stories, and that's haunted and shit, but I've never seen anything. Well, until now, I guess. You only see it if they want you to see it, she said. They? What do you mean, if? I was cut off by a code being called over the intercom. We both jumped up and ran to the room where the code was being called. We worked tirelessly on the patient, but ultimately ended up losing them. The rest of the shift was heavy given that we lost a patient, one of whom we were all fond of. The topic got lost in the day. A few hours later, I was in the locker room changing out of my dirty scrubs and back into my civilian clothes when I heard a huge bang above me, like someone dropping something heavy. I looked up. Nothing is above us, though, I thought to myself. I got into the elevator, and for the first time in my 2 years of employment, a thought popped into my mind. I hit 3. The black box beeped, and then it flashed a red light. I swiped my card in front of it, and it beeped one more time and turned green. I felt the elevator go up. My stomach dropped. I was really going up. I knew when the doors opened, I would be greeted with pitch black. What if I couldn't get it to close back? What if I got stuck on the third floor? Who were they Shayna was referring to? The elevator stopped. The pause between it stopping and opening felt like a lifetime. Then the doors opened. I was met with a long, dark hallway. On the end was a room with a light on. There was music coming from the room. I felt frozen. I didn't know what to do. I had come this far, though. What if a patient had got lost up here? What if someone needed my help? Could someone be squatting up here? I stepped off. I was going to investigate. As scared as I was, I had made up my mind. Insert Van Morrison song here. Edit, blah, blah, blah. I knew the song. My grandma used to play it for me all the time. She'd say, "My brown-eyed girl, this is for you." And we'd dance and laugh. I had loved that song as a child. I always thought of her. The song made me happy. But now, I felt like the times when I would feel joy from the song were gone. I started down the hall. I had my phone in my hand ready to call for help. I felt stupid. I got to the room and took a deep breath before I walked in, readying myself. The room was beautiful, almost like a miniature ballroom. It was so fancy and clean, so misplaced. To the right of me was this beautiful cherry wood end table. On it was a record player, the source of the music. Here, Ad, do you remember when we used to sing sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la? Suddenly, there was a bang down the hall, and I snapped back to reality. My adrenaline kicked in, and I grabbed my pocket knife I always kept in my purse. "Hello?" I called out in a shaky voice. I peeked my head down the hall, but saw nothing. Then it was so dark, how could I have seen anything? Then the record started to skip. Add here, D, 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 D. I walked over to it and fixed the needle, and it corrected itself. For a moment, I'd forgotten about the sound from the hall. I was distracted by a filing cabinet on the far side of the room. It was old and dinged up and didn't look like it belonged in a room like this. I walked over to it and pulled out a drawer. They were patient files. At first, I hadn't thought much about it. Maybe they were patients that had died or had been seen several years prior. Maybe it was just storage for old records. I pulled one out and dusted it off. The name on it was Shelley Harden. I opened it up and read the first page. Subject was administered experiment number 431. And then it read as a log or a diary entry. September 19th, 1973. Day 1. Hardy has been placed in solitary confinement. She has been denied her medication for 3 days. Now Hardy shows signs of manic episodes and paranoia. I read on. September 20th, 1973. Day 2. Hardy is begged for medication. She is in full-blown detox from lack of medication. She is violent. We chained her to the wall and threatened to take away her meals if she was not compliant with the experiment. Hardy was not cooperative. Food privileges taken away. What the fuck? I thought to myself. What kind of shit is this? I didn't want to read anymore. I wanted to get out of there. I started to close the file and a picture fell out and almost slid completely under the filing cabinet. I bent down to get it and turned it over as I raised back up. It was a picture of Shelley's corpse. She was in the room with blood covering every square inch of the walls. Her eyes were wide open with a look of torment. She had the words, "Save me," carved into her skin, on her arms, on her legs, on her torso, on her face. Everywhere. I dropped the picture and file and ran like I never had before. Got to the elevator and hit the close button so hard I broke my nail. The doors finally closed and I got down to the ground floor. I ran to my car, got in, locked the door, and sat there for a minute, trying to catch my breath and process what I had just discovered. I looked up and the light from the room I had just occupied bled into the hallway and reflected on the room above my car. Just enough light came in for me to clearly see the words, "Save me," written in red. The drive home was a blur. I laid in bed and kept the light on at night as I tried to drift off and thought about how scared I was, how confusing this all was. But I thought about Shelley and how it must have been so much more terrifying for her. I made a promise to Shelley that night. I was going back, and I was going to find out who did this to her. The next day I woke up to my alarm. I felt like I had only just fallen asleep. I got up, and as I was getting ready, a part of me felt like I'd dreamt the whole thing up. I guess I was trying to rationalize. After a brief moment, I adjusted my thinking and convinced myself I hadn't imagined this. The ride into work was quiet. I didn't play anything. I sat in silence and deep thought. I had no idea what my next move was. I didn't know who to go to with this, or even if I had that option in the first place. Someone there knew something, and plenty of people had reasons to try to keep a lid on this. I pulled into the parking lot and finished my coffee, per usual. I looked at my floor to scan the lights and then the third floor. The third floor still had a light on. It was coming from the other side, but it crept through to the side I was parked on. I got out of the car and went to the cafeteria. I needed more coffee, and I wasn't ready to go to my unit yet. "Well, good morning, sweet pie. Want some breakfast?" It was Miss Myrtle. She was the cafeteria manager, and she was well past the point of retirement. "No, thank you, Miss Myrtle. I'm just getting some coffee." I walked over close to her, and in a hushed voice I asked, "Can I ask you a question, Miss Myrtle?" "Well, of course, dear," she said, a little distracted about my changed demeanor. "You've worked here as long as this place has been running, well, pretty much, right? What do you know about what happened on the third floor?" The smile that was permanently etched into her face faded. In the 2 years I've worked here, I've never seen her any other way. She was always cheerful and smiling. Cass, I don't think that's something we should talk about. Please, I think people got hurt. Like, a lot of people. I just want to help them. You don't know what you are up against, dear. This is a battle you won't win. I would hate for something terrible to happen to you. She placed her hand on my shoulder and gave me a look of concern. Just walked away. I hadn't felt threatened by that at all. It was more like she was scared to talk. Someone had something on her, or rather, she knew what would happen if she spoke. I placed $1.50 on the counter, then walked out. When I got back up to my unit, Shayna was changing in the locker room. I walked up to her and told her I needed to talk to her. Something happened here, Shayna. Something bad. Shayna just laughed. Something bad happens here every day, Cass. It's a hospital. No! I mean, I think several people were hurt. Like, experimented on. Against their will. Did you get any sleep last night? I know yesterday was hard, but sometimes you just have to sit in the car and have a good cry after a shift. I let it out and try to move on, you know? I went up to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor? Is this some kind of joke? Who put you up to this? Mike? I stared at her. I wasn't playing, and I needed her to realize that. Cass, what do you mean? How did you even get up there? You don't have access. Her face was serious. I had finally gotten her attention. Well, I guess I do have clearance because I got up there. I heard something yesterday. After you all had gone, I had charting to finish, so I stayed after. Second shift was so busy, I was charting in here. I heard something above me. Something loud. No one was around. I thought maybe I should go look. Are you insane? Why would you do that? Do you know how much trouble you could get into? The 3rd floor is forbidden. All else aside, at the very least, it's dangerous. It's not up to code. Listen to me, Shayna. I found files. Lots of them. I looked at one. This patient was tortured. And not only that, it was documented. These people, whoever were in charge of this, they made it happen. This wasn't something natural. They made her suffer. And her picture. She had words carved into her skin and... Stop it, Cassie. Stop it. You're gonna get us fired. She looked at me and took my hands in hers. Look, I'm not saying you didn't find that. I'm not saying I don't believe you. But whatever is up there needs to be left up there. Do you understand? It's not our place. I looked down at my feet for some time, and as I looked up to meet her gaze, I felt a warm tear run down my cheek. She was a little girl, Shayna. Her expression changed, and now she seemed to understand the gravity of the issue. Shayna was in her 60s. She had 5 children and 3 grandchildren. She had moved over here when she was 16 from Mexico in search of a better life, and she had made one. She was a devout Catholic, and she had a good soul. She had taken me under her wing when I got here, and I saw her as a mentor. We even got together for dinner sometimes. What do you want to do, Cass? I want to go back. I need to grab some of those files. Maybe take them and go somewhere I can study them. I want to get to the bottom of this. I want justice for her and whoever else was subjected to this. She let go of my hand and slid her hands into her pocket. Tonight, I'll ride up with you and keep watch. I'm not getting out though, Cassie. I'm not. You don't have to. If you at least watch for me and help me cover my ass if I get caught, that's all I need, I said with gratitude. Just meet me by the back elevator after report today, okay? She nodded and walked out. A part of me felt bad. Bad for dragging her into this. Bad for sharing this trauma with her. But in the same aspect, I felt like I could be more productive if I had someone to help me. I knew I could trust her. The shift went by faster than any other shift I had ever worked, maybe because I knew what was coming. I waited at the back elevator for about 10 minutes. Just as I was starting to get restless, I saw Shayna shuffling around the corner. Where have you been? Well, David was my relief, and you know he takes 45 minutes to receive report. Plus, I ran out to my car to grab these, just in case. She held up a rosary. I started to say something, but then I thought to myself, what the hell could it hurt? And we got in. I hit 3, swiped, green light, and up we went. I don't understand how your card even works, she said. Before I could respond, we were there. The door opened. We looked at each other and said, "Go!" I ran down the hall towards the light. I turned the corner so fast I almost tripped. The file and the picture were still on the floor where I had dropped them. I grabbed them up, and I opened the drawer and grabbed as many as I could hold. "Hurry!" Shayna yelled. She sounded terrified. I ran back down the hall, and before I was even halfway, I could hear Shayna screaming in pain. I got to the elevator and ran in, hitting the closed door button. I looked at Shayna. Her hand had smoke coming from it. The rosary had been burned into her skin. "What happened, Shayna? Oh my God, what happened?" The burns were 3rd degree. "Diablo! Diablo!" she screamed. She kept screaming over and over again. "Diablo!" We got to the ground floor, and I couldn't get her out of the elevator. She had backed into a corner and was sitting down, staring at her hand in horror. I shoved all the files in my backpack and got down on my knees to tend to her hand, and with the force a human shouldn't have, she shoved me back. Hard. I went backwards and out of the elevator. It started to close and I yanked my leg out of fear it could get caught. The doors closed. I got to my feet and hit the button several times, but nothing happened. I waited in the parking lot for an hour and Shayna never came out. I got into my car and started calling her. No answer. I drove home and sat on my bed for a long time. What had happened up there? Where was she now? I tried calling once more. Voicemail. I texted her. "Shayna, please text me. I'm so worried. I don't know what happened and I'm scared. Please tell me you're okay. Just please talk to me. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this." I decided to open up a file. Patrick Witt, September 20th, 1973. 0900. Subject has shown signs of an altered mental state. Subject has been placed in solitary confinement with subject Hardy. 0945. Subject Witt has been informed his meal privileges have been revoked. Subject has been given an ultimatum of starving or fighting to the death for food. 1012. Subject has begged us for release, one or both of them. 1300. Subject has become irate. 1420. Subject has been crying and pleading for release. 1650. Subject Witt has been ordered to kill Subject Hardy. I closed the file and stood up, throwing it onto my bed and backing away from it. They were forcing these patients to harm each other or themselves, like a sick game. I bent over and threw out my dinner. I felt disgusted. Then my phone chimed. I walked to my bed to grab it, and I was happy when I read and saw it was from Shayna. I swiped open to see her response. I screamed as soon as I opened it. The adrenaline went coursing through every fiber of my being. It was a picture of Shayna's lifeless body. She was lying in the room where I had taken the files, clutching the rosary, written across her left arm. "Save me." I called the police and reported the picture I had received. I didn't really know what my plan was, but I knew this had spiraled out of my control and I needed serious help. I told them everything. Being that it's a small town, pretty much everyone knows everyone else. And it just so happens that the chief of police is married to the house supervisor of the hospital. Chief Baker took my call and eventually my in-person report. When I got there, they checked my bags and asked that I, for the time being, left all my stuff with the unit clerk. I complied. I sat in an interrogation room with a cheap coffee and wrote down my statement, shaking and crying as I wrote. Eventually, Chief Baker came in, and I must have started talking so much and so fast I overwhelmed him. "Slow down. Let's just take it slow." He put his hand up as to yield to me. "My friend is dead. Don't you understand? Dead. She's in the hospital." "She died in a hospital?" he asked. I could tell he thought I meant she was a patient. "No. Well, yes, but she wasn't a patient." I could see that he thought I was losing it. "You don't understand. We went up to the 3rd floor because something was going on up there and she got burned. I couldn't find her, and someone sent her picture to me, and she was dead, just like the others. The others? Ma'am, have you taken any illegal substances tonight? What? I shrieked in frustration. I don't take illegal substances. I work in a fucking hospital where I'm tested regularly. Do I fit the mold of someone who takes illegal substances? You aren't hearing me. Okay, listen. You need to calm down before I put you in a holding cell. You can't do that. I haven't done anything wrong. You won't listen to me. And then I remembered my phone. I was so distraught that it had taken me an embarrassing amount of time to realize that I could just show him the picture. My phone, I said as I stood up and slid my chair back. I ran to the clerk and asked if I could please grab my phone out of my bag. I dug to the bottom and got it, and I ran back to the room. This will prove everything. I have the picture of her. She was murdered. Tonight, someone sent me the... I froze. Our texts had been deleted. All of them. She wasn't in my recent messages at all. What the fuck is going on here? I yelled. Ma'am, I think you need help. Can I call someone? A friend? A family member? I sat down, defeated. I didn't understand. Was I really losing my mind? I scrolled through all my contacts to find Sheena's number. It was gone. In a final attempt to prove my sanity, I asked if he could just do a small favor for me. Can you call Christy? Can you please just call her and ask if she saw Shayna leave? He sat there for a minute and just stared at me. I could tell he didn't believe me, almost like he was just going to entertain this solely to calm me down and get me to leave. Sure, he pulled out his phone. Hey, sweetie, I have one of your employees here. Cassie Ferris? Yeah, she has an interesting story about some murders taking place at the hospital there. And honestly, I'm worried about her. But she wants me to ask you if you've seen Shayna leave tonight during a shift change or if you know about her still being there. He covered the phone with his hand and whispered to me, What's her last name? Morris. It was her married name. Yeah, Morris. There was a long pause, then he looked at me with concern. Hang tight, Miss Ferris. I'll be right back. He got up and walked out of the room. A few long, dreadful minutes later, he came back with 2 other officers. I stood up and began to cry. She's dead, isn't she? She's really dead. They found her. Ma'am, take a seat. No, just tell me what happened. Did they know? Did they catch the person? This is all my fault. I fell to my knees. I knew I was the reason she was dead. I didn't need anyone to tell me that. You don't think I felt bad enough without anyone else chiming in with their opinion? Yeah, I probably should have tried harder to find her. I was scared and she pushed me. It wasn't her. The way her eyes were, her strength, that wasn't her. I was terrified. You don't think I wanted to help her or find her? Of course I did. I waited. I called. I did all I knew how to do in that moment. And it wasn't enough. I don't need anyone telling me that this was my fault because, damn it, I fucking know that. My train of thought was broken when the officers put their hand under my arm and helped me to my feet and sat me down. Miss Ferris, I think you need to get checked out, Chief Baker said. His face changed from frustration to concern. I'm fine. I wasn't injured. They only hurt Shayna. We're gonna take you to the hospital for observation, okay? He slid his hand across the table and placed it on mine. Hell no. I'm not going there for observation. You can't treat me like 6404. I'm a nurse, not a patient. I'll go see her body, but I won't be put on observation. I'm not crazy. Cassie, look at me. He tightened his grip on my hand and his face got very serious. There isn't and never has been an employee there by the name of Shayna Morris. I yanked my hand out of his. He was wrong. He had to be wrong. I knew that I was in too deep now. I stood up, calmed myself down, then told him I had made a mistake. I was absolutely terrified of the situation, or what they could do to me, or what they would do to me. I knew I had to pull it together because they were watching my every move. I'm sorry. I haven't been sleeping much lately. I made a mistake. It took everything in me not to panic. I headed to the door and I could feel their eyes on my back, and I feared that one of them would grab me and throw me back into the room. But nothing happened. I got to the door to leave and Chief Baker spoke. Miss Ferris, you sure you'll be alright tonight? I still think you should go for observation. No, I'm fine, I said as I wiped tears from my eyes with the back of my sleeve still facing the door. Sorry for wasting your time. Once I got in the car, I raced, ran, packed a bag, grabbed my clothes, my laptop, my files, and my dog. I drove for hours, not really having a destination, but knowing I had to get far away from there. I knew they were coming for me. Finally, I arrived in a big city. I pulled into a Holiday Inn and paid for my room in cash and slid the receptionist a 20 to keep my room listed under another name. After I had settled and took my dog for a walk, I pulled out my laptop and began to research. First, I typed in the name of the hospital after seeing some bullshit about their credo, and when the hospital was built, I realized I had to be more specific. So I typed lawsuit 1970s against UMC. In January 1971, a lawsuit was filed against UMC for alleged cover-ups involving patient safety. The suit was brought forth by attorney Angela Dems. When one of her clients reported a suspicious death, it was unclear who the client was, but many people came forth reporting similar incidents. UMC was temporarily closed from 1971 to 1974 pending investigation. Eventually, all claims were dropped, and UMC resumed business in 74. There was a picture of Angela Dems in the article. My next thought was I needed to find her. I cleared the search bar and typed her name in, followed by the lawsuit. I had a feeling she'd be dead by now, but maybe I could find someone who knew something. I found a few articles about a missing persons report. Angela Dems was missing? The report was from 1971 and it read, Angela Shannon Dems, 32 of Nashville. Hasn't been seen in 10 days. She was last seen leaving Dems and Associates at 5:10 p.m. on Thursday, March 4th. Dems was wearing a blue dress with a black jacket. Her hair is shoulder length and black, approximately 5'5" to 125. She has blue eyes. If you see Angela Shannon Dems, or suspect that you know where she might be, please contact the local police department. I clicked back to look at a few more postings and to see what had happened. I learned that to this day, no one has seen or heard from her. I couldn't believe what I was reading, and there was no way someone was going to convince me that this was a coincidence. The lawyer that tried to shut down UMC and expose what was happening there had coincidentally disappeared before the trials were set to begin. And if she was missing, what fate did the families of the victims succumb to? I typed Dems and Associates into the search bar and pulled up their website. It was, to my surprise, still an operating business. I looked through the list of lawyers and associates to see if anyone has the same last name, hoping that even if they never knew her, maybe the families had theories that had been passed down. Courtney Dems. I stopped scrolling and wrote down her email and info. I popped up my email account and typed in her address. Miss Courtney Dems. My name is Cassie. I work at UMC. I was wondering how you were related to Angela Dems. I believe I have recently came across some things that Angela was trying to bring to light. I also believe I may be in trouble. Please respond. Cassie. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a while. I had no fucking idea what I was doing or what my next move would be. I opened up the file on Patrick Witt. 1800. Upon arriving at the cell, we noticed blood flowing from under the door. When the cell was open, we observed Subject Witt standing over Subject Hardy. Subject Hardy was unresponsive. Subject Witt was missing fingernails on the right hand and bleeding from deep wounds around them. It was observed that Subject Witt had ripped off the metal sliding upon the door and created a shank of a sort. It was unclear how the subject was able to do this. Subject Witt began to walk towards the staff right before they were able to restrain him. Subject Witt ran the shank across his neck. 1845. Subject Witt has been pronounced dead. I scrolled through his file and found a copy of the death certificate with the cause of death being unexpected heart failure. Were they seriously writing up fake death certificates on these poor people? I flipped to the next page in his file. It took me a minute to figure out, but after studying it for a while, I realized it was a chart. On each line, there was a row of boxes, similar to Microsoft Excel. After reading the chart from left to right, the initials were in the first box, patient's last name was in the second box, date in the third, and finally the amount of money listed. They were bets. Some pages were bets on who would live, some were bets on who would die, wagering money on people's lives. It was like chicken fighting, but with people. I felt so sick. I took an oath to take care of people and help them. It's why I got into this career. And here I was reading about people in the same business as me. Hell, the same company as me, doing this to people who needed them. As sick as I felt, I knew there were many other files I had to scan through. I started to open up Shelley's file back up and I heard a ding. I looked at my phone and saw it was an email notification. I slid the bar across the phone and opened it up into an email from Courtney. Hello, Cassie. They are looking for you. When they find you, you will also disappear. They know you know. You need to get far away and fast. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but I cannot get involved. Save yourself. Run. I sat there somewhat stunned. How did she know this? Had she been contacted by someone about me? Nothing about this entire fucking day made sense. I stood up and rushed to the minibar that was conveniently in my room. I grabbed an airplane bottle of Jack and chugged half of it. The sting made me have to break halfway through. I lifted it back to my lips, and just as I was about to take the second half down, there was a knock on my door. I froze. There was a knock at the door. I ran over to the bed and grabbed the files. I lifted the mattress and pushed them under it. I closed my browser and turned off my computer. Who is it? No reply. I walked over slowly to the door and peered out of the peephole. It was the receptionist. I opened the door. Yeah? Can I help you? I'm sorry to bother you. The police are out front. I told them you weren't here, but they said they see your car and, I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but you need to get out of here. You seem like a nice lady and thank you. Thank you so much. I slammed the door in his face, not intentionally. I appreciated him. I just had no time to waste. I grabbed up all my stuff and threw it into my bags. I got my dog and I hauled ass. I went through the back exit of the hotel. Although it was a longer walk to my car, I could at least see from a distance if they were out waiting for me. I didn't see anyone, so I booked it. I ran as fast as I could. I got to the car and started it up while I locked the doors. I hit the gas, but it didn't go anywhere. I mashed it again. Nothing. What the hell? I go out to check my tires and I noticed the back right tire had a boot on it. Holy shit! I said. Then everything went black. My vision didn't come to me immediately. My hearing was there, though. You know, your hearing is the last to go. I talked to all my life support patients, or those in comas. They can still hear you. Maybe not everything, but I like to think that they get some sort of comfort from it. I no longer had good memories associated with this song. My adrenaline kicked in and my eyes opened up. I realized my worst nightmare had come true. They got me. I was restrained to a gurney. I immediately started to pull and flail, but being that I was restrained to a gurney, I quickly realized that I couldn't shake too much or I'd flip over. What the fuck? I yelled. Let me go! Who the fuck are you? What do you want? I continued on. Dr. Cates walked in the room holding a clipboard. I see you're up, he said in a cheerful voice. I knew Dr. Cates. He frequented the ICU patients. I had always thought he was so charming. Why are you doing this to me? I asked in a pitiful voice while tears streamed down my face. Well, Cassie, you went snooping and stuck your nose where it didn't belong now, didn't you? he said as a matter-of-factly as he wrote something down. You're involved in this too? What kind of sick fucks are you people? He put the pen down on the clipboard and focused his gaze on me. You see, Cassie, this is a very lucrative business we run up here. It's been going on for almost 50 years now. You were safe. We had a strict no-employee policy. Well, until they go poking their heads where it don't belong. And that, my dear, is exactly what you and Shayna did. You killed her! I knew you killed her! They tried to make me feel crazy, like she didn't exist. Why her? You could have just taken me. Why her? That night you came up here together, we had a new admission. He was referring to bringing someone up here on the 3rd floor. And we happened to hear all your commotion. Our colleague stepped out of the room to see who was up here, and that's when he saw Shayna. She was yelling Diablo. She saw the evilness in you that I wasn't able to. Actually, what she saw, I would imagine, was really scary. My colleague and I were performing a lobotomy on a patient and the procedure went wrong. Guess my colleague hadn't properly restrained him because he fought us. And in the struggle, my colleague went through the angular artery. A big to-do, really. Blood everywhere. He was pretty saturated with it. When he ran to check on the noise, he was covered in the red mess. In the dark, I'm sure it did look like the devil. He laughed again, like it wasn't as big of a deal as it really was. I kept quiet for a while. I didn't even know what to say. I think the shock had kicked in and my brain was just focusing on how to get out of this situation. Well then, I'm sure you know what goes on up here then. A variety of things really. Some patients we use new drugs on or take them off their current medication just to see what happens. Some patients we try new procedures on. Others we use old procedures. He put his finger to his forehead, referring to the lobotomy. Sometimes we just want to see what others will do when pushed to the point of survival. It's a fascinating business, really. You're disgusting. You and anyone else involved in this. Those people don't deserve that. Those people are helping us make medical breakthroughs every day, Cassie. It's a necessity to have test subjects. You can only learn so much from testing on animals. Human being subjects, though, they have been teaching us since the beginning of time, really. This place will be shut down. Eventually someone will find out the atrocities that take place in here. You can't get away with this forever. I screamed at him. Cassie, we have many procedures set in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's why you're here, he smiled at me. And you're mistaken if you think this is the only location this happens at, my dear. This is a worldwide business. What do you think we discuss at all those conferences we have? Anyways, I'm going to get the nurse to grab some chlorhexidine and get you ready for your procedure, he said as he walked out of the room. Fuck. I had to get out of here. I had a janky hairpin in my ponytail. It was a far stretch, but it's all I had. I bent my body sideways as best as I could, and my neck immediately started cramping from the angle I had it. The first couple times I barely touched it. Man, how we take our thumbs for granted. Finally, I got my thumb positioned right and grabbed it. It was one of those cheap metal hairpins that the ball of wax had worn off, leaving a sharp metal end. And to think, I almost threw it away this morning. I started to stab the fabric on the restraint, over and over and over again. I actually had a small hole started, and then, to my complete horror, I dropped it. I started to cry. That was it. I was going to die, and no one was going to know what happened to me. The nurse walked in with all the supplies and laid them out on the Mayo stand next to me. I knew her too. Not well, but I knew her. I had her for Secret Santa one year. I had gotten her a Bath & Body Works candle and a Starbucks gift card. I didn't know if we were supposed to tell them later that it was from us or not, but I did. One day in the elevator. She told me it was the best Secret Santa she had received in the 6 years she was there. She realized it was me and gasped. Oh, Cassie. You're involved too? I asked in a cracking voice as tears started to fall down my cheeks into my ears. I don't want to be. They made me. I'm so sorry, Cassie, she said as tears filled her eyes. I never assisted on a patient that was someone I knew. Usually they just get them off the streets, junkies or runaways. I've never had to do this to an employee. she said with a sadness in her voice. Please, Steph, please. I pleaded, crying so hard I could barely see. She looked around and back to me. They'll kill me. They'll kill my family. They'll kill you. I can't, Cassie. I closed my eyes and sobbed hard. That's the kind of thing that takes the breath right out of you. There's so many things I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to travel, settle down, have a big wedding, start a family. So many things. But I was about to die a week before my 24th birthday. With my eyes closed, I felt a tug on my arm. Steph was untying me. I don't understand, I asked. As much as I wanted to live, I didn't feel right knowing that she had to sacrifice her life or her loved ones just so I could. I understood her predicament and I didn't hate her for it, but she was helping me, with everything at stake. I'm going to cause a distraction. Run like hell. She took the last one off my foot and I hopped off the gurney. I hugged her hard and I breathed her in. I finally released her and started towards the door. She grabbed my arm and pulled me back. She placed her badge in my hand and closed my fingers around it. Go! I ran like I never had before. I didn't have time to wait on the elevator. It was too risky. I ran straight for the stairwell. I swiped her card and opened it. I ran down the stairs so fast I skipped some each time. I got outside in the parking lot, remembered I didn't have a car. I didn't even know where mine was. I ran across the street to a dollar store and called a cab. I got into the cab and took it back to my house. I grabbed the spare from under my flower pot and ran to pack my things. I grabbed my secret money stash I had hidden in the floorboard and my gun. I jumped back in the cab and told him just to drive. I placed $200 in cash on the console. Consider this a deposit, I said, and his expression changed from, "Are you crazy?" to, "Yes, ma'am." I don't know where I'm going. I don't know who I can trust. I don't think I'm going to make it. I'll be found and they will kill me, slowly. So before I go, I wanted to thank you all for letting me tell my story. I needed someone to believe me. Even if I can't change any of this, I can at least warn you. Please, whatever you do, stay away from hospitals. Wow, what a fantastic story. It's not often that I get very into stories like this, but man, that one just grabbed me all the right ways. Guys, if you enjoyed the story, make sure you go show the author some love over on Reddit. And it kind of does make you think, though, how much of this stuff do you think actually happens beyond our knowledge and that we could get in trouble or even hurt for knowing? You never know what's going on out there, do you guys? Good night.